right. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Y'all sit down. I'm hoping there won't be any math quizzes. I was not prepared. I did not study. We have a gathering here today, and I want to give honor first to God, who is the head of my life. I want to give my respect to Bishop Seawright, to Supervisor Seawright. I want to give honor to all the reverend clergy that are gathered here together. I need to give a special nod to the Reverend Jesse Jackson, not just because he's reverend clergy, but because he's the first person I ever voted for. I was 18 years old in 1988. Football player at Stanford University, and I cast my first vote of my life for the man to my left, and I want to thank him for being a trailblazer in my life. I want to give my love to my sister and a peaceful warrior for justice, the great congresswoman whose district in which I stand. I want to give it to Terry Sewell. And I would be remiss if I did not point out one of my best partners in the United States Congress, Sheila Jackson Lee, who's over here right now, just joined us. Congresswoman, stand up, Congresswoman. Congresswoman, thank you very much. I want to give honor to a man with a heart, the big of a lion, to my friend Sherrod Brown, who is here. I want to recognize him always. And then very quickly, I just want you all to know that for many years, I have felt this deep sense of gratitude, that this has been a leader who, when they were First Lady, they didn't just say they loved kids, they fought to expand children's health care. Let the deeds she's done speak for her, that when she was a senator for my neighboring state, that she stood up for farmers and factory workers. She stood up for first responders who fearlessly went to 9/11. She was a leader. I'm thankful for that. I am thankful that when she was Secretary of State, she went around the planet Earth standing in the faces of dictators and tyrants who were suppressing the rights of women and said that women's rights are human rights. She brought peace to conflict. She banished diseases with strategic investment. I am thankful for all that and more, but I want to say today what I am thankful for is that she is my friend. Will you give another round of applause? Now, I'm excited to be here. She got more votes. She got more votes. The Reverend wants to remind me. The Reverend sent me, he never forgets to try to educate the young folk. He sent me last week a document about the Electoral College being a legacy of slavery and the compromises that were made. Maybe we need to address that too. But I'm here to talk tonight about the blessing of this church in my life. I will explain in a minute that I am here almost quite literally because of something that happened in this church and on that bridge, but I'll get to that. I don't not want anyone to forget that it was a young man who was shot and beaten following a nonviolent protest while trying to protect his mother and his grandfather. The young man spent days clinging to his life in the only hospital that would treat a young black man, Good Samaritan Hospital, and he died 54 years ago this past Tuesday. Remember this date, February 26th, 1965. Pastor, you asked me to give, I'm sorry, I forgot Pastor Strong here. I want to say to the pastor of this church, he extended to me the hand of friendship and kindness and asked me to come and give not just words, but to come give a sermon. And his kindness to me makes me have to begin by saying, I want to make sure that I'll be speaking from a Bible verse. Genesis chapter 37, verses 19 and 20. I will make it plain, my brother. And so it was Jimmy Lee Jackson's life and death and the underlying conditions of our society in this country that sparked the ignition point for the march that we come here to recognize. We need to say the name. We need to say the name of Jimmy Lee Jackson. And that Bible verse we know, it's so purposeful because we are here at a time where we still face underlying conditions that steal the lives and contribute to the deaths of many of our children. Right here and right now, from Selma, where children and young men are dying, to Sacramento, where we mourn a death, from Newark to New Orleans, we gather here as they did then when the conditions are morally unacceptable, where too many young people are dying, where dreams are being slaughtered, where a community must respond. And it was right here in this church. Jimmy Lee Jackson's casket was held open, like Mamie Till did when Emmett's died, where the community came together not just to mourn, but they answered the question from that Bible verse that was spoken when Joseph's brothers saw him approaching. This dream interpreter, this coat of many colors, and Joseph's brothers spoke those words when they grabbed him and threw him to the death in a well. And that Bible verse says, "Behold, here cometh the dreamer. Let us slay him and see what becomes of his dreams." It was this church right here that answered that call. It was this faith community with a defiant love that said, we will answer what will become of the dream. We will not allow ourselves to be morally maladjusted. We will not allow ourselves to be corrupted by an unacceptable culture. This church here that knew you can't pray right and do wrong. This church knew that before you even speak to me about your religion, you've got to show it to me in how you treat folk. It was this church that did not show the shame of indifference that was shown to a man beaten and left by the side of the road by a priest and a Levite. This church showed the love of a Samaritan that understood that we are gathered for a purpose. Now, I want to remind you that this church gathered in this sanctuary at a time that they were making it illegal for black folk to gather together. And even though it was illegal, on the day of the march, folk gathered here together, understanding that when 2 or 3 are gathered together in his name, he is in the midst. But it was 600 that came together that knew that in that unity is strength. That in the midst of raging hate, you can still form a sanctuary of love, that you can still form a beloved community. They gathered as a testimony that the true definition of hope is not allowing despair to ever have the last word. And together in unity, they began their march across a bridge, together in courage, together in faith, together in a love that was not a feeling but a verb, a love that demands sacrifice and action. They marched together across that bridge, and they marched into history. I want to take a step back and let you know that we are here because of that stubborn, defiant love. We are here. I was one of those young boys growing up. My parents got upset walking around like I had somehow earned the privileges of my time. My dad is like, boy, don't you walk around this house like you hit a triple. You were born on third base. My parents brought me up knowing I owed a debt. You mentioned all my degrees. My dad was like, boy, you got more degrees in the month of July, but you ain't hot. Life ain't about the degrees you get, it's about the service that you give. We got to remember we cannot handle the moral amnesia that forgets the roots that are in the soil that was poisoned with hatred and bigotry but still found root in the ground. We may be the fruits, but we cannot forget the roots. My roots go back to slavery. They rose up through poverty and segregation, hardship and pain. Rose up through black churches, through civil rights organizations, through HBCUs. Roots rose up in the 1960s even when my parents tried to buy their house. They were told by the real estate agents when they would show up and see it was a black family looking for a home in a white neighborhood, they were told, oh, this house is sold, or, oh, this house was pulled off the market. My parents told me when I was sitting around my kitchen table, boy, you got to remember the struggles it took to get here. It was the grace of God, but it was something deeper than this. It was the grace that we show each other. It was this decency and this love that we showed one another. My family looked for places to live, and they were denied housing because of the color of their skin, but they found a group of Americans who were meeting in a living room in New Jersey who said to themselves, well, we may not be able to stop all the hate and bigotry in this world, but we're going to do something about it. And they bound together, and they set up an operation where my parents would go look at a house and be told it was sold. And the white couple would follow them and find out that the house was still for sale. On the house I grew up in, 123 Norma Road, Harrington Park, New Jersey. My parents were told the house was sold. The white couple found the house was for sale. The white couple put a bid on the house. The bid was accepted. Papers were drawn up. A closing was set. And on the day of the closing, the white couple didn't show up. My father did, and a volunteer lawyer. And they marched into that real estate agent's office, and the real estate agent saw he was caught but didn't give up. He was so angry that they ran a ruse on him. He stands up and he punches my dad's lawyer in the face, and he sigs a dog on my dad. And as I was growing up, every time my dad would tell that story, the dog would get bigger. Eventually, I was a teenager getting ready to go off to college, and my dad would look at me and say, boy, you better appreciate what you have, because I had to fight a pack of wolves to get you in this house. We are all here, not because of individual actions. No, I'm not discounting the truth that we've had some heroic individual actions. We've had incredible examples of self-reliance, incredible examples of rugged individuals, and I honor those themes in our country that evidenced by countless millions of individuals, but you all know that rugged individualism didn't get us to the moon. Rugged individualism didn't beat Jim Crow. It didn't beat the Nazis. We did these things together. Small groups of people pulling together saying, I'm not going to wait for Washington. We are going to bring the change from our communities. Y'all know we didn't beat back the denial of women to have the right to vote because a bunch of men in Washington around 1900 got together and said, hey, fellas, you know what? It's about time those women have the right to vote. No. We didn't get voting rights because a bunch of people in Washington said it's time for those Negro people to have a right to vote. We didn't get civil rights because Strom Thurmond came down to the Senate floor and said, I have an epiphany. Frederick Douglass says, power concedes nothing without a demand. We are here because of that grace of the beloved community of people who sought amidst poisoned soil of hatred to plow seeds of love and watered those seeds with tears and sweat and blood. We are here today because of that sacrifice. But we can't indulge in a moral amnesia. And in this day and age and in this challenge, forget that you honor history not by just reflecting it or reciting it. You honor history by emulating it, letting it challenge you and demand from you that you show the lessons you've learned. We come together to honor the sacrifices today, but we also know that the only way we can honor the work that was done before us is recommitting ourselves to it. And I'll tell you what, the challenges we face, people want to make it just about the people in the highest offices of the land, people who traffic in hatred, people from offices that can't even condemn Nazis or white supremacists. People want to point fingers and forget the lesson of King that what we must repent for is not just the vitriolic words and violent actions of the bad people, but the appalling silence and inaction of the good people. Bobby Kennedy said that it is violence. That violence of indifference and inaction is what threatens our country. We have become a nation that is too adjusted to injustice, too content with the suffering of our neighbors, a nation that is too divided against ourselves. We're people who have common values and common ideals and common pain, have lost a sense of common purpose. We have a pitiful politics now that pits American against American. We fail to honor the creed of our country, this ideal of e pluribus unum. We fail to honor the Declaration of Independence that ended with those words that we must mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Turn on the TV and tell me where you're seeing the sacred honor. We are failing today to follow in the footsteps of the foot soldiers who brought us thus far on the way, who called us to lift every voice and sang, who from this sanctuary began to form a more beloved community. You see, behold, here cometh the dreamer. The dream is under attack. The dreamers are in danger. And we need each other more than we realize in this country. We have one nation and one destiny. The dream is under attack. The dream is in danger. The dream is in danger when we have a nation where we are the greatest industrial power in the globe, but now we are leading our industrial peers in the lowness of our life expectancy. Opioid addiction and suicides pointing to a moral pain in this nation. The dream is in danger when actions in this country have shown that we have a callous disregard for life and lead industrial nations in infant mortality. The dream is in danger when the violence of poverty proliferates, when the richest nation on the planet Earth has 1 of every 5 of its children living in poverty. The dream is in danger when every day people are putting aside life-saving drugs, 1 in 5 Americans because they can't afford it. The dream is in danger when children all over this land are being poisoned by what is in the water right here in our neighboring Lowndes County with neglected tropical diseases that people don't even think go on in this country, where we have millions of children who find it easier to find unleaded gasoline than unleaded water. The dream is in danger when this nation has, like Brian Stevenson says, a criminal justice system that treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. A criminal justice system tortures children by putting them in solitary confinement, shackles pregnant women, locks people up for doing things that 2 of the last 3 presidents admitted to doing. The dream's in danger when we have a nation that pays teachers poverty wages. The dream is in danger when we can fund the greatest war machine on the planet Earth, but when our soldiers come home, their inadequate health care, their over-incarceration, their mental health struggles, their suicide rates speak to a poverty of priorities. The dream is in danger when it is easy for criminals to get their hands on guns because we do not pass common sense gun safety laws in our country. Behold, here cometh the dreamer. Let us slay him and see what becomes of his dreams. The answer to our dangerous dream, the answer to the demands of the dream is called from the people of our history, the foot soldiers, many of whom are in this room. The answer is that we are called to love each other again, to revive civic grace, to have a more courageous empathy in this country. The answer is to understand that patriotism is love of country, and you cannot love your country unless you love your fellow countrymen and women. We now are called to understand that the cords, the spiritual cords that tie us together, are stronger than those lines that divide us, to remember the lessons of our lives. I said that I was here directly because of those marchers. Well, this is what I mean. I went to go back when I was a senator and find those people that helped my family move into a home. I found the head of the Fair Housing Council easily from the 1960s because she's still head of the Fair Housing Council now. She is 92 years old. And now she doesn't represent black families in northern New Jersey. She represents same-sex couples. She represents Muslim Americans. She represents Americans with disabilities because for her, justice has no color. Justice has no race or religion. She confirmed facts of the story that I needed to know. Was it a pack of wolves or a dog? I needed to know. She sends me to the lawyer who organized all the other lawyers, and I asked him all my questions. He was a businessman when he started the organizing. Now he was a retired New Jersey judge, 84 years old. But as a young man in his 60s, he had just started a business. He was struggling to support a new family. And I wanted to know why this man would help black families moving into New Jersey. And what he told me knocked me over. He said, I remember the moment I made the decision. I go, what do you mean the moment? He goes, I was sitting on a couch in New Jersey watching TV. And it was a movie. I looked it up. The movie was called Judgment at Nuremberg. Now, this was when we had 3 channels, y'all. They'd go off at 11 p.m. And then they suddenly had breaking news. It was 1965. We have breaking news all the time now. Roland knows this. Melania has a jacket. Breaking news. But back then, it was a rare thing. They broke away from an ongoing movie to show a bridge in Alabama. And he said he watched the news as these marchers who left a sacred sanctuary and went to march across that bridge. And he said he watched them as they were confronted by Alabama state troopers. And those marchers were going to kneel and pray, but they didn't get a chance to kneel and pray. I know they were going to kneel and pray because I've talked to some of the foot soldiers. I talked to my colleague, always my hero, John Lewis, who told me they were going to kneel and pray. But just as they went to pray, they get gassed, tear gas shot at them. They get stormed at with billy clubs, beating them viciously. And this man on a couch in New Jersey is horrified by what he sees. He thinks to himself, I should go to Alabama, but realizes he can't leave his new business. He can't even afford a plane ticket. But he didn't give up then. He knew that this was not the beloved community that our country calls to be. He knew that he pledged an oath to liberty and justice for all that demanded more from him than just words. And so knowing he couldn't go to Alabama, he decided to get up right there and say to himself, I'm going to do the best I can with what I have, where I am. And he gets on the phone and starts calling around who might need about an hour of legal work I can spare. And he found this woman named Lee Porter who was like, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus, I need some help. And the two of them started working together to represent black families. 4 years later, he says, he gets a case file with 2 names on it. Cory and Carolyn Booker, my parents. And they went to work moving my family into the home I grew up in. I'm going to tell you right now, I would not be here if it wasn't for marchers on a bridge who inspired a man 1,000 miles away in New Jersey, who then went on and change the outcome for a generation not yet born. We are connected to each other. We are tied in one destiny. You are not alone in your fight. When you stand up for justice, when you stand up for truth, when you stand up for love. And that's where I want to end. Behold, here cometh the dreamer. Let us slay him. Jimmy Lee Jackson, February 26, 54 years ago. Trayvon Martin died on February 26, just 7 years ago. We're here in Selma where the gun violence, children are dying. From New Orleans to Newark. Behold, here cometh the dreamer. This is a moral moment in America. The very idea of our country, people are losing faith. It's a moral moment in America. Where people are feeling like the forces tearing us apart are stronger than those holding us together. This is a moral moment in America. Here cometh the dreamer. It's time for us to defend the dream. As Langston Hughes said, there's a dream in this land with its back against the wall. To save the dream for one, we must save the dream for all. It's time that we dare to dream again in America. The dream that we can be a country that every child has clean water and clean air. Great public schools with professionals who are well paid and that care. It's time that we dream again, bigger dreams in America. That health care is a right, that poverty is a wrong, and where the days of our children dying from gun violence are long, long gone. We gotta dream bigger dreams again in America, where we don't lead the world in incarceration, but in job creation and higher education. We must dream bigger dreams again in America, that we can banish bigotry and heal hate, and that we will elect leaders that they know the only way to unite people. That is what it takes to make America great. I know in my heart that love still thrives in this nation. I know in my bones that we are still a nation that has the capacity for grace in our civic spaces. I know that we are here in a church and we are not alone, that all across this country, people still are dreaming that America can work for their families and their children and their seniors. But it is up to us to do the work it takes to make the dream real. And so I call upon everyone, not just to say the words, liberty and justice for all, but make the sacrifice necessary to make them real. Not to just say we are a nation with equal justice under the law, but make the sacrifice to make them real. Because our politics can be a place where joining together in that civic space, we can have our children joining together, black children and white children and brown children singing the songs of our nation. Oh, say, can you see that we are finally a nation where everyone can be free. Thank you. God bless you now.
On the next Washington Journal, a reporters' roundtable discussion